obviously we have a lot to talk about, but the first thing that I want to dive into is I want you to pretend that no one listening knows you, and a lot of people who are listening don't. And I want you to kind of give us the nitty gritty on who you are. And I want you to share your story, because your story about pivoting your career later in life is one that has always resonated with me, and really and truly, like, I have held on to and I think of often. And I think it is so inspiring for women who want to make a change and they think, oh, it might be too late, because it is never too late. And you are so proof of that.
That's so nice. Thank you. So my story is that I worked in marketing, mostly doing event marketing for an incentive company, an incentive marketing company, but it was a job. It wasn't a career. And then I got married and I stayed home with my babies. And that was my career. I had 3 kids in less than 4 years, 3 little girls who are now very big girls.
Who are beautiful, by the way, and all amazing in their own right. So
thank you. They're interesting people, and that's what makes me the most proud. I mean, they are beautiful, but they're like intellectually curious.
Well, that's what I mean. They are amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
they're good girls. Thank you. Thanks.
You can tell.
So I stayed home with them, and I was doing a lot of volunteer work, including a full-time volunteer position at the Medical Research Foundation at Children's. And when it was over, I wanted to go back to work. And so I kind of fumbled my way into being a makeup artist. I was looking to start a business that was sending makeup artists out to people's homes, because it's what I needed my whole year that I was doing this volunteer position. While I was vetting that concept, I met a makeup artist who recognized that, like, I understood makeup, I understood color, just kind of instinctively. So I did some training as a professional makeup artist. I got signed by a big international agency about 3 weeks after I finished my training. I jumped in, I started working, and at this point I was 40. So it was, definitely a second act. At 40, I was being sent out on jobs that 20-year-old makeup artists would have been sent out on. Because I didn't have the professional experience. And I just got very hands-on very quickly and built up a professional book. I wound up doing editorial and ad campaign and commercial artistry, celebrity artistry, cover campaigns. I mean, really fun stuff. And then I realized that I really preferred working with real people. And so I started a business called Dollface Beauty School. And it really started with me teaching people how to put on their own false eyelashes. It was just as the eyelash trend was really peaking. And I got a lot of press for it, and my name started getting out there. And then I wound up being an on-camera beauty expert for a website called joyous.com, which doesn't exist anymore. And from there, I got a book deal to write my book, Lazy Perfection, because this website, I had an audience of 500,000 people 4 times a week. And my audience wanted to hear more about my lazy perfection aesthetic. I got this book deal. I developed my line. I started doing speaking gigs and national TV appearances, and now here I am. That was so long-winded and boring.
No, it was not long-winded and boring, because it is like just such an amazing story. And I always share with people when people bring up like beauty and whatnot, I'm always like, do you follow Jenny Patinkin? And they're like, no, who's that? And I'll be like, you need to follow Jenny Patinkin, because she's amazing. She's real. And she started this career like later in life, almost on accident. Like,
it was almost by accident. I never intended to become a makeup artist ever. I never thought I would do that.
When you made this transition, like, how was that received by your kids, by your girls?
My kids were great. It was my friends who were not great. My kids, were very excited and proud to have, it's cool, right? To have a mom who plays with makeup and who gets to go spend her day with celebrities.
And who eventually gets to be on TV. Like
and
there's
who
something
gets to
about
be on
that,
TV.
right?
I mean, now my kids are incredibly supportive. Even when they were little, I mean, I think they understood that mommies can have a career. Even though my youngest was only 6 when I went back to work. And I'm not going to lie, like I got so consumed by that career early on that there were a couple of times I forgot to pick them up at school and like, you know, mommy things where I looked at the clock and I was like, oh my God, I'm late to get my kids. But they were great. My husband was great, but my friends were the challenge.
In what way?
People didn't at that time, before Instagram and social media really hit its stride, people didn't think about being a makeup artist in the same way that I did, where it's not just a counter associate at a store. And people would say to me, why do you want to be a makeup artist? You can just hire a makeup artist. And they would say things like, oh, it's so cute that you've got this little career now that your kids are getting older. It's so good that you've got something to keep you occupied. And it was like a lot of people didn't understand why I wanted to do it.
But you loved it.
I did. I loved it. And it's not like I love makeup. We've talked about this, Lindsay.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't love makeup. I wouldn't call myself a makeup girl. I like the beauty industry and I like being able to convey in a really transparent, clear way to my audience that it doesn't need to be makeup with big quotation marks around it. You don't have to go whole hog. You can find a way to interpret it so that it fits in with your lifestyle and just makes you feel good. So many people, makeup stresses them out.
Well, and this, I want to bring this up because our audience doesn't know our history. And I met Jenny while doing an interview for my old company. And Jenny took me and a couple of my employees to Target, and we like went on a haul, and Jenny showed us like all this, like, it wasn't makeup. I don't even think we even talked about makeup. It was just like a lot of product to like make us feel good as like tired moms. This was also like 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like in it with my kids. I mean, my little one was 3, I think, at the time. And I didn't have time for beauty. And it was, what drew me to you was not the makeup, to your point. It was the education and how you made me feel as a human, you know, not just like a mom, a woman, a working person, whatever, but as a human who just like needed to make myself feel better.
You know, I mean, I think that's the whole point of makeup, but it gets very lost in all of the advertising and pop culture and media messaging that we get, where so many people think that we should, or we're supposed to, or we need to do things in a certain way. We need to look like, you know, Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner. Boy, I just showed my age on that one. But you know, there's this whole constructed misconception about makeup and beauty, and that's where our own internal stress comes from all of these advertising constructed messages that we get about beauty. And people are, I think it's changing a little bit now, but people at that time when we met didn't realize that it doesn't have to take very much to just, you know, brighten up your eyes and clear your complexion and feel fresh.
I mean, there's still products that you told me that day that I use. So
oh, that's good.
There
We
you
should
go.
probably update, but that's good.
You know, probably, but still, I mean, I use other products too, but still, like that just goes to show, right? Like how the information goes so far. So I want you to kind of now tell us about your products, because that has been another extension of your brand. And I think just a lot of people get really lost when they have like this idea for a product and like, how do I do it? And how do I make it come to life? And going back to the top of our conversation, you know, you were saying, oh, I was focusing on the makeup brushes. And yes, you were, absolutely. That was what we talked about a lot, I think, when we first met.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to kind of go through the process with us of how you started this other part of your business and where it is today and how you've evolved it.
Really, everything in my business is need-based And I think that, the really successful brands have that authentic place of originating their brand. So it really started with face rollers. It's something I had been using for many years before they got trendy. They originated as part of traditional Chinese medicine, and most of them were jade. My husband was at one time the biggest jade supplier of jade jewelry in the country.
Okay.
So, we had jade all over the house, and jade rollers and jade, whatever.
I bought my first roller from you.
Oh, thank you.
When we were at your house, I bought it.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh,
I think so.
I think that's before I even had my own. That's how long ago it
I
was.
bought one from you though. You told me about the rollers, and I
Yeah.
bought my first roller from you, and so did my best friend Sammy. So
Oh, that's great. Well, so the rolling really was just because we had them around the house, and I recognized that they're really a quick fix beauty tool. I mean, they fit lazy perfection to a T, because in seconds, you reduce inflammation, boost circulation, promote radiance in the skin, it depuffs under your eyes. And it really, like in a matter of seconds, without having to plug anything in, you don't need any product on your skin. For me, that low-tech simplicity is kind of the core of everything in my assortment. So those two rollers I was about to show you, but your audience can't see them. I have a large and a mini. But from there, during COVID, things really kind of pivoted, and it became more about self-care. And that's where I moved into gua sha, which is something a lot of people are learning about now, but it also originated in traditional Chinese medicine millennia ago. But they are kind of a full mind, body, spirit beauty tool, where you get the energy healing of the stone that you're using, which in my case is rose quartz. You get that lymphatic drainage and reduced inflammation and boosting circulation. But gua sha, unlike rolling, you need to be a little bit more mindful about how you're using the tool. And so I was using it to self-soothe during quarantine. And then I started looking at other ways that I could take care of my own skin while I couldn't get to my dermatologist or my esthetician. So I developed a derma roller to help with product absorption. And I started really thinking about sustainability, because we were 6 of us living in my house and we were generating so much trash. I started thinking about sustainability. So I developed reusable bamboo rounds instead of using cotton rounds, and a reusable sheet mask we launched this year, because disposable sheet masks are just piling up. There's some crazy statistic, like 10% of everything in a landfill is a personal care or beauty related product. And sheet masks are awful. So, I did that. So, COVID really informed a lot of my current product assortment.
You're the second person I've talked to today who has found the positive in COVID, and in terms of their business.
Yeah.
And I commend you for that, because I know for so many, it was so hard to figure out what to do, how to make a change, how to keep their audience. And you did that, and you did it successfully. And now as we're still in the pandemic, but as we're kind of coming out the other side, hopefully very, very soon, we will be more normal-ish. You now have all of these new products and a whole new part of your business.
And it's evolving still. I mean, COVID really changed everyone's perspective on the world around them. And to your point, now that it looks like we're coming out the other side of it, what does it look like next? And in my business in beauty, it really needs newness. The consumer gets bored. And so what comes next when we take our masks off and we're interacting and people are looking at our faces? I
love my mask that I bought from you.
Oh, thank you.
It's like the best mask. It's so soft
and
breathable, and like, it's so great. So,
and do people stop you everywhere you
yes,
go?
Because it's
that mask?
So cute. And for those of you listening, it's a mask that's like It's like a fair skin color. I mean, Jenny's very fair skinned. It's like a fair skin color and it has lips where your lips are. And people love it. It's so cute.
It's, it's funny. It was never intended to be skin color. It's just the natural undyed color of bamboo. Because I don't like to use dyes. I didn't want to have a dye next to your skin or that you're breathing in, but people think it's supposed to be skin toned. It just happens that it's close to my own skin color.
Well, I love it. So it was one of my favorite masks. So, okay, you've said a couple things that I want to touch upon. You talked about like that your products are very need-based, and you just mentioned the newness and how your audience really wants like what's new and the latest.
Right.
How do you figure out what that is? Like, how do you make that determination? And like, have you brought something to market that like totally flopped? Like, have you had any of those? I mean,
I haven't had anything that's totally flopped. There definitely are some tools that I misjudged. They were very important to me, but I misjudged how important they would be to the consumer. Nothing has done poorly, but there have been one or two that haven't done as well as I expected. In terms of judging what's coming next, it really is it's my own perspective. It's how I move in the world and what's important to me. And my big focus has been for the past couple of years and will continue to be sustainability. I think the next big conversation that's already starting is going to be about packaging and waste in the beauty industry in particular, but also extending to fashion.
So kind of on that note, how do you go about taking a product to market? I mean, there are a lot of people who just don't know how to do that. And you've done it with multiple products, and you're in multiple magazines for your products, and they have won many beauty awards. So how do you go about doing this?
It's challenging. Some of it is having the nerve to make cold calls. That's how I started. I picked up the phone and I cold called either store founders or store buyers. Some of it is networking. When I was doing that beauty expert gig, I was meeting a lot of brand founders, and I was partnering and collaborating with them as much as I could just to get my name out there. I had a publicist who was laser focused my first couple of years on just establishing me as an expert in the industry. And now I work with a consultant who helps me with my retail placement. And of course, I also have a publicist.
And where can you buy your products? Where are they sold now?
We're in about 340 stores now. It's really exciting. We're just launching in Anthropologie at the end of this week in 50 of the 140, I think, Anthropologie doors.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're in every single Blue Mercury, about 15 Saks Fifth Avenues, a few Bloomingdales, Neiman Marcus, Credo, Cosbar. I mean, we're in a lot of places now. It's very exciting.
But it's amazing. That's so exciting. And you can buy it on your website. Yes.
And you can buy it on my website, of course. Yeah.
That's where I bought my mask. So
thank you. We always love web sales.
Of course, the web sales are the best sales, right?
They are the best sales.
I'd love for you to also kind of talk about the importance of your Instagram community, because you really share there. And like, you share a lot. You're very personable and personal. I mean, you share your like treatments when you're going in for treatments. And I believe that it just draws people in and it makes people want to hear from you. But I want to kind of hear from you, like, how important is that to your business? Do you see a lot of sales converting from that? And kind of how that's really amplified during the last 20 months?
It does not boost my business. It boosts it boosts loyalty among my followers, which ultimately does translate. But for me, it is such a sticking point that influencers and celebrities don't talk about the beauty treatments that they do. And by not talking about them, it just creates this absolutely unattainable standard of beauty. And particularly as we get older, people look at celebrities and think to themselves, my God, that person looks amazing. And I just look like crap in comparison. But for me, by being transparent about the services that I do, I want people to know that like anybody can achieve the level of beauty that they want to, the level of their appearance that makes them happy. Like there's no, it's all achievable. You can do it. You have to pay for it. But I just feel like the celebrities who are in their 50s in particular, and they're not talking about their hormones, like I want to hear from them. So I talk about it because I think that there is a gap. I mean, I think I've gotten a lot of feedback, even from followers in their 20s and 30s, saying it's so good to hear about this because I never knew that this was what happens to your hormones as you age.
You're so good about sharing.
I mean, for me personally, I've always been uncomfortable with trying to keep a secret, and just, it's just part of my nature to share. But I also just feel like it's my responsibility with my little, 18,000 follower account. I do feel a sense of responsibility to be honest with people about the services that I'm doing, because everybody looks around and feels terrible when they see somebody on Instagram who they think looks better than they do. And you don't have to feel that way. You can know their secrets.
Yes. And I think it's important to be transparent about both their secrets. And I've actually had multiple conversations recently with business people about the necessity to be more transparent about like business secrets as women to help each other grow. That like, why are we keeping things so close to the vest? Like, why wouldn't you want to like help each other and like utilize each other, right? And like that's the whole point of this podcast, is really to kind of get in and like share the secrets. Like,
well, I will say that I have found the clean, in air quotes, the clean beauty community or the indie beauty community to be really good about sharing information and being collaborative and sharing resources and providing connections and contacts. I've never been in a big conglomerate beauty space. I've never been in that retail environment. I've never worked in retail where, maybe it's a little bit more cutthroat, but everybody thinks beauty is so dominated by women that it must be terribly cutthroat. But I have not found that to be the case at all. It's been an incredibly inclusive and helpful community.
That's awesome. I love hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
I love hearing it because it's so important that we're talking to each other and helping each other and sharing. And I think like, especially as small business owners, we have a lot to learn from one another. So
absolutely, we do. And, there's enough room for everybody, particularly in beauty, where, there's how many different types of lipsticks? Thousands. There's room for everyone. So, why are we getting uptight that, somebody has launched a new line? Let's embrace it.
Right. There's billions of people on this planet, right?
Right.
So speaking of the billions of people on this planet, how do you find them to buy your products? Like, what tools do you utilize other than your Instagram account?
I have a publicist, and we do not market to the billions of people on the planet. We market to, the ones who are in the US. We just started shipping to the UK and Canada. So we're going to start looking at doing some PR in those areas. A lot of it is product placement. A lot of it is, the really high level press, Today's Show, Good Morning America. Those placements are meaningful and they translate. A lot of it for me has been word of mouth. I think that a lot of people would consider me to be in that cult brand kind of category, where if you know, you know. And then my retail partners have all been really wonderful about being collaborative. and
Which is
sharing on their social media accounts, giving me placements in their emails and on their websites. And
so you
like
feel
that.
supported as a small business owner.
Definitely, but you have to learn as a small business owner how to navigate those waters. It's not easy to ask for what you want, and it's not easy to even identify what you want. Having a consultant has changed everything for me in that regard.
So let's talk about that. Because you've mentioned your publicist and you mentioned the consultant. So talk to me a little bit about the team that helps you find success and who has helped to build you up, and how that's helped to translate into these media placements and more sales.
So I met you through my publicist, who she primarily does broadcast placements. So that's
your publicist is also going to be a guest on Dear FoundHer.
Oh, she's so wonderful.
I know she is.
Smart. Your audience is going to love her. She's amazing.
We had an amazing interview.
I love her. So she's been the one who's gotten me all of my national broadcast placement, and those placements go a long way. I have a publicist who handles social media and influencer relations, and then I have a traditional media publicist. I have a consultant who helps with my large national accounts like Neiman Marcus and Blue Mercury. I have a consultant who helps with smaller independent accounts. I have a national director of sales and education, and then I have a freelance staff who are in the stores meeting the customers. And we have, I don't even know how many people on that team, maybe 9. And that team is growing. And then I have my home team. I've got 3 people on my home team.
Tell me how important your team is to you, and tell me not just who they are and what they do, but like what are the qualities that you look for when building your team, and how have they helped you to succeed? Like, what are the type of people that you surround yourself?
Knowing my own strengths and weaknesses has helped me select people who can fill those gaps. And that's a really important thing I think a lot of business owners don't recognize. I don't need people around me who do things the same way that I do. We would never make any progress.
100%.
So, my key employee, my number 2 employee, has been with me about 7 years. And so she has seen the business really grow and expand. And she's our Renaissance man. She does everything. And she has the attention to detail that I don't. I am not great on detail. And that's really her area. And then our other people, a lot of it is trust. They are just, they can do things without having to check with me. If I'm traveling with my family, or I was out for a couple of weeks in the beginning of September and everything went without a hitch. But I would say really the biggest thing is recognizing where you need to plug the holes.
And I cannot emphasize more what you just said about trusting your employees, because you need to be able to do those things like take a vacation with your family and unplug for a minute. And it's really hard for founders and entrepreneurs to find that moment to unplug and just take a second for themselves.
Well, I never really unplug.
Right, I know.
But one of my employees started out as our babysitter. When my oldest daughter, who's now 24, was in 2nd grade. And she babysat for us for years. She would stay with the kids when we were traveling. So there was already that level of trust with her. And I mean, I am so grateful for her every single day, because she knows everything.
Having those people you can count on is priceless.
Absolutely.
And it makes the world of difference.
I think a lot of small business owners, and I think a lot of women, I don't know, this might be a little bit of a broad brush, but I think a lot of people don't trust their instincts when it comes to their hires and who they hire. My husband would say that he was terrible at hiring people because he didn't trust his instincts, and he was looking to fill a position without thinking about how it would support him. He was thinking only about filling the position. And I think like instinctively, if something feels right. And if you've got question marks in your head and it's not a good fit. We actually did have one employee that we hired, and I knew very quickly that it was not going to work out. And, fortunately, COVID took care of that situation for me.
Yes.
But it was my own fault. I didn't trust my instincts.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think back to my employees from Bum Club before it was acquired, and every single person that I hired was someone that came to me, that wanted to work for me and work with me and believed in our mission. And most of those people were along for the ride, like, 5, 6, 7, some of them 8 years, the whole, until we were, some of them after the acquisition. There's still a legacy employee there today. So
That's great.
It's so important, to your point, to really just kind of have that gut instinct. And I think if someone approaches you and wants to be a part of something you're building, that's like such a great sign that you want them to work for you.
But it also speaks to you as an employer, Lindsay, because people don't stick around if they don't feel valued, and if they're not compensated accordingly, and if they're not, treated with respect and given room to grow their own skill base. I mean, you always hear people say that the best boss is the one who prepares their employees to fly. I would hate if any of my employees flew.
But you too have had your employees around for a long time. I mean, you just said 7 years.
Yeah, for sure. But I also want to make sure that they're happy. It's not just about me. It's got to be about them also.
100%. And I mean, as an entrepreneur, like early on, there were times before my acquisition and early on when I didn't take a paycheck because I needed to pay them. And I that was part of being an entrepreneur and part of being a founder. And that is something that a lot of people don't talk about. Like a lot of entrepreneurs do not admit to that and do not talk about that, but it's very normal. And when I say it to people, they're like, "Oh my God, you had that?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I did have that."
No, it's very normal. And you're right. People do not talk about that.
And they only want to talk about, the success. So,
right.
But I think it's so important, to your point, to have that team surrounding you that you believe in and they believe in you, because it definitely is a two-way street, to your point. So,
right.
So I want to be mindful of our time, but I want to I would love for you to share with us maybe your top 5 tips for someone who is looking to make that change, or someone who's just hesitant and wants to start their own company. I mean, you did this and you did it so well, and it seems like it was seamless. There might have been some bumps in the road, and I'm sure there were, but you really took the opportunities that were presented to you with stride. And I think that's really important to point out. What would you tell someone, or what would you tell yourself 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago?
Oh gosh, there's so much. The first thing I would say, I hear from my friends all the time who are, at this around 40, who are looking to make a change. That seems to be like the most common age. Just start. It doesn't matter if it doesn't wind up being the path that you ultimately take. The analogy I always tell people is you have to walk down the hallway and open a few of the doors. And, maybe some of them will slam on you, maybe some of them you'll slam, but you have to look in the doors to see what the opportunities are. So that's the first thing. The second thing is taking a risk and putting yourself out there in a way that might have felt uncomfortable when you were younger. And that was my experience. By the time I went into business at 40, I definitely didn't have the same insecurities and sensitivities that I did when I was starting out in my first job. You have to know that a no isn't personal and a no isn't forever. And so those are kind of my 2 key things. Just start and take some risks.
Which that advice.
And then the third thing is talk to anybody and everybody you can.
Yes.
And that's a hard one for me. I still struggle with that. But just having a conversation with anybody in business, and it doesn't have to be because you need something from them, just have that conversation and you never know what little nuggets you're going to get.
I could not agree with every single thing that you said more. I mean, that is why I'm doing this. That is why we are here. You know, part of why I started this podcast was really because I felt like there was just like no blueprint as a founder. And I grabbed onto any bit of information and any time that anyone could give me about their business or any information, it was like, yes. And I was taking everything, you know, and I want to now give that back and pay it forward and give it to other founders and entrepreneurs and people who want to make changes and find independence. And so all of that information is, and that guidance is so right on point. So thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. I'm glad that my experience can be helpful.
Of course. And so I want to tell everyone to please follow Jenny Patinkin. It's at Jenny Patinkin. I'm going to link it in the show notes on Instagram. And you can find her at jennypatinkin.com, where you can find all of her products and so much more. All of her tips and all of her media appearances and everything is there. But Jenny, thank you so much. You are an inspiration. I constantly reference our conversations from years ago, and I know I will be constantly referencing this one as well. And I so appreciate your time. So thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Lindsay.